it's going to get worse. I don't pay too much attention to him. Mr. Robini claims he saw all this coming, and yet Mr. Robini has been 100% invested for the last 2 years. I don't pay too much attention to people like that.
If I could keep with the depression theme here, you said recently that most of the major U.S. banks, the larger banks, are completely bankrupt. Well, the market agrees with you. Look at the weekly charts on Citigroup or Bank of America or American Express. I mean, you pointed out that the incompetent are stealing from the competent in almost a reverse Robin Hood style robbery here with these bailouts. How much longer can this go on?
Well, unfortunately, I'm afraid it can go on longer than you and I want it, than I want it to anyway. You can fool a lot of people for a lot of the time, as we've all seen many times in history. Eventually, of course, it's all going to collapse around us, and then everybody's going to be very angry. You're likely to have civil unrest later in America and other countries, not just America. You're already having it in some countries. And if things continue to get bad, and if I'm right, in a few months, people are going to wake up and say, this didn't work. All of this stuff that they've been doing in Washington did not and has not worked. Remember, Chris, they've been trying this for a couple of years now. So far, nothing has worked, and things have only gotten worse. Eventually, that's going to sink into everybody, and you're not going to have a lot of happy people.
Every time they have one of these bailouts, Wall Street responds with a vote of no confidence. I never thought I'd hear these words emerge from my mouth. I'm beginning to think that I miss former Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson here. This new Treasury Secretary, Geithner, continues to spook the markets with limited details over his bank bailout. What would be your first moves as the new U.S. Treasury Secretary, Jim?
Well, first of all, I do not miss Paulson at all. I mean, he was a disaster almost from the beginning. Now, of course, Geithner, the new Treasury Secretary, was part of the Paulson disaster. In fact, Geithner's more responsible. He was the head of the New York Fed. Well, the New York Fed is the one that's supposed to look after the banking system and the investment system. So it was all right there under his nose. He and Bernanke, and Greenspan, but Bernanke and Geithner are largely responsible for the problems we're having now. And Paulson was bad enough, but Geithner's even worse, if you ask me. What would I do if I were Geithner? If I were Geithner, I'd resign, while I can, because he's going to go down in history as a gigantic disaster. No question about that. What would I do? I'd abolish the Federal Reserve. I'd get rid of Bernanke. I would stop the bailouts. I would let people go bankrupt. And I would lower taxes on people so that people can save and invest, and maybe the system will revitalize itself. It's going to take a while. Chris, and we had the worst credit bubble we've had in world history. You don't finish something like that in a year or two and say, oh, well, now let's move on. I mean, we had 10 years of just insanity. Somebody has to pay the price, whether we like it or not.
Exactly. Unlike precious metals, the CRB and crude oil failed to have a big counter-trend rally here. And it appears as though this waning industrial operations, not just domestically, but globally, has simply crushed demand, at least temporarily, for crude oil. Do you agree that this global recession is going to have to pass before we'll see a resumption in demand and much higher prices for crude?
What's happening, Chris, is bad for most parts of the economy. The fundamentals of nearly everything are being impaired. The fundamentals at Citibank are impaired. The fundamentals at General Motors are impaired. However, the fundamentals for commodities are mainly being enhanced. Nearly every commodity you can think of, the fundamentals are improving because of what's going on. Some farmers cannot get loans for fertilizer. Nobody's going to open a mine of any kind for 15 years or so now. It takes 10 years to bring a mine on stream. Well, you can't get any money even if you wanted to now. So all the reserves of everything are in decline, including oil. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, did a big survey recently and came to the conclusion that the world's oil reserves are declining at a fairly rapid rate. Unless something happens very dramatically quickly, you're finding that the reserves of all commodities are in decline, and even if world demand stays bad for a decade, supplies are going down at a rapid rate. Oil is one of the beneficiaries.
These are clearly difficult times for every investor, even professionals. Like yourself, I talk to guys that have been in this industry for decades, and many of them seem to be suffering along with the rest of us. Would you please lay out a basic investing plan for the next year or two that could benefit almost any listener?
Any listener is very difficult to to deal with. But I would say that one should learn to sell short if one doesn't know how. And if that's too complicated, just ignore it, forget it. One should certainly learn about what's happening. One should learn about commodities, real assets, whether it's oil or silver or gold or whatever it happens, zinc or copper, whatever it happens to be. Cotton should learn, because if I'm right, that's the only asset class which is going to come out of this with things enhanced and where the great opportunities are down the road. I would also learn about currencies, because if I'm right, we're going to have serious currency turmoil in the next 2 or 3 years. One should think about learning to invest abroad, because if I'm right, the U.S. dollar is going to suffer dramatically during the next 4 or 5 years. And one had better start taking out some insurance now, because things are not going to be fun, if I'm right, of course.
Very good. Okay, my special guest today, Jim Rogers, renowned global money manager and author of the upcoming book, Of a Gift to My Children, A Father's Lesson for Life and Investing. This is scheduled for release on April 28th of this year. Jim, do you care to give folks a tidbit or two on the upcoming book?
I've been in the investment business a long time. I came to parenthood late, so I figured it's better to write down some of the things I've learned about life for my little girls. Many of the lessons, as you know, Chris, of the market are applicable to life, and life's lessons are applicable to the market. So I wrote some of this down. I told them, be skeptical, learn to think for yourself, don't believe anybody or anything you hear or read. Do your own thinking, be independent, be careful of the boys, be very wary of the boys. All the things that I've learned over my lifetime, and I wanted to write it down for them, and let's hope that they get something out of it.
It's always a pleasure